Chapter 10, 15%. There's no question that our birthday date was one of the most special nights of our lives. It wasn't because of the gifts, or even the baldness, although that was shocking. It really, really was. It was because of what we'd each given up for our family. I knew even the gift of the Magi had nothing on Sarah and me when it came to our family. Little did we know how much we'd need that one wonderful night to hold on to in the months to come. The doctors increased Noah's chemo by adding something stronger to the mix, and the side effects hit him harder than any of us were prepared for. Even while Noah was in treatment, the nasty bill collectors kept calling without any care or any sympathy at all. They made everything even worse than it already was. I knew most people seem to think money makes the world go round, but I can remember more than once telling those callers that I hoped they all won a trip on a cruise ship, and then it would hit an iceberg. That was the polite version, anyway. Sarah and I would always be there for one another, but fear was starting to put a strain on everything we knew. It was like we were living in shifts. Either I had mornings with Noah and she had nights, or vice versa. All of it was wrapped around work, of course. We were both present, but rarely together as Noah got worse. It was almost as if grief and exhaustion had split our little family into rotations instead of being what we used to be. Our friends and family were still around almost all the time, but I know Sarah and I felt as alone as we ever had. When your child hurts, you hurt. And as hard as it is to say, when your child is dying, the biggest parts of you die too, even while you're still breathing. Regardless of how bad things were, Noah was still with us, sleeping most of the time, but thank God still here. We were never going to give up, but it often felt like the world was completely against us, and for that matter, the answers to my prayers were still painfully silent too. To make matters worse, especially for a family that was already stretched so thin, was my company laid me off. When my boss, who was also my friend Tommy, told me the news, he had tears in his eyes. I knew it wasn't his fault. I knew a lot of others got laid off too, but I bet not many of them had a child with cancer lying in a bed at home. I didn't even want to tell Sarah, but once again I knew I had to. After leaving work for the last time, before going into the house, I sat on that old porch swing as I have many times in the past. I'd been out there so many times, talking to the watcher or giving him cookies, but this time I think I just needed someone or something around me that I didn't think I could disappoint. We were already struggling to pay the bills, but now I had no idea what I was going to do. After sitting outside for a while, I finally walked in, knowing I was about to disappoint Sarah once again. But instead of being upset or showing any kind of emotion, after I told her, she just quietly went back to sit beside Noah, right where she was before I came in. I couldn't say anything else because I understood she'd had enough and couldn't take any more. Later that night, after we switched back and forth with Noah for a few times, I went back out to the porch swing to let myself fall apart again. The watcher didn't peer down on me. Instead, he tucked his head, almost as if he was praying. A few moments later, for the second time ever, Buddy ran over by himself, without Dan or anyone else, and laid down by my feet. But that was only after he licked my hand again. After that, we all just sat there, thinking a little less and eating macadamia nut cookies. It seems both of those methods took the edge off just a bit. Even though Buddy was my neighbor's dog and not mine, I could tell he loved me too. Dogs just love differently. I've never met any dog that cared about what you did for a living or even if you had a job. They just love you without question or conditions. Sure, the cookies probably helped a little, but it was still love. And both Buddy and the watcher showed it to me at just the right time. I remember joking around with Sarah about how Noah should never be a zoologist or a veterinarian, and then she gave me that look. You know, the look that didn't need any words but said everything. But the truth is, maybe I was wrong, because those two animals have looked out for us in ways I could never explain, even if I was the only one who knew it. I'm not so sure if that kind of love just happens by accident. This time, when Thanksgiving came around, we didn't plan on having a feast. and we really didn't care if we ate or not. We were still so thankful that Noah was hanging in there, but nothing was the same. The bill collectors were all but threatening to take everything we had, and I truthfully didn't see any possible way out. Finding money wasn't my priority. Noah was, and I spent all that extra time I had now with him, but I also knew I wasn't providing for my family in the way I should have either. Nanny and Linda brought over just about every meal, so we never had to worry about eating, especially desserts. But the light bill, the phone bill, the taxes, and especially those ever-growing damn medical bills still had to be paid. I felt like a failure in one way, and in another, I just wished I was rich so I could still spend every moment with Noah, but without those other thoughts clouding my mind. I almost felt like I was cheating on my own family. I felt like part of me was always somewhere else, trying to figure out how to keep us afloat, when all I really wanted was to be fully present with my boy, and with my wife too. It was getting tougher and tougher, and as it did, I spent almost all the time that I wasn't with Noah on that old porch swing. I think I was just seeking more of those raven prayers and special beagle kisses, but this time reminded me of when Sarah and I separated for a while, and I knew I had to do better this time. When Thanksgiving came, the gang still came over, but it wasn't the same. Our friends and family tried to make us smile, but like I once remembered, I can smile when I need to. I can even laugh or joke around when I feel the time is right, but the truth is, me and being okay couldn't have been any further from the truth. As we cleaned up from our meal this time, there was no fishing, or a collection of friends watching Noah play with his bicycle or with Buddy outside. There was no request for a second or third helping of banana pudding, like I did at both of our past sweatpants feasts. This year, there really wasn't any need for sweatpants at all. I think after that dinner, I finally reached the point where I realized that if I truly loved my family the way I always said I did, then I had to do something, anything to make sure they had what they needed, no matter how much time we had left. Just like Lucian Graves, maybe I wouldn't be understood, but I knew one thing for certain, and that was we couldn't keep going on like this. Before I left, Nanny and Papa came over and talked to me like I was their own grandson. It was nurturing and sweet, but probably just a little too late. Linda made sure she came over too, as did Dan. All their love was so appreciated, it truly was, but in that moment, I knew I had to take care of my family regardless of the cost. The one thing the military did well for me was they made sure all of us in the war could keep our military life insurance policies after we got out. $500,000. That's the one thing I made sure I always paid, no matter how broke we were. I guess part of me just needed to know that if things ever got to this point, my family would still be as okay, or as okay as I could help them be. Noah's odds of survival went from 50% down to 15%, even 10% from one doctor, and maybe this way Sarah could at least start over the best she could. I know I didn't fully put us in this situation, but I couldn't help us get out of it any other way either. I could only find a part-time job after I was laid off, and things were beginning to feel like they were completely swallowing us. Before totally signing off on my fate, I went to the local church. I knew over the past year I've prayed more than ever. They weren't just empty prayers either. They started out with so much faith and hope, but as time went on and Noah became sicker, I almost felt like I was back at Ruby's, where my hopes and dreams started out strong, but quickly vanished as fast as that leprechaun did when I smashed up that evil slot machine. At church, I got there before anyone else arrived. It was just me, sitting in a pew being stared at by these giant stained glass windows. And even though I prayed once again, silence was all I heard. I didn't know if I expected St. Peter or the Virgin Mary to come down and soothe my soul or give me another way out, but that's not what happened. There was only that deafening silence once more, and once more, it felt like that was the greatest betrayal. When I got back home after checking in on Noah, I think what solidified my destiny was I heard Sarah talking to her mother. I guess you could say I was eavesdropping again, but what she said broke my heart even more. She was telling her mother that she didn't know how much longer we could keep going like this, with the hospital bills piling up and the insurance barely covering half of what we needed. She said Noah was getting weaker, and she didn't know how to look me in the eyes and pretend like everything was going to be okay. She sounded tired. Not the sleepy kind of tired, but the tired down in her soul. I could hear it in her voice, and over the last year I saw it in her face so many times. As she was talking to her mother, she said she didn't want to talk to me about those problems because she knew they were my problems too, and I was already carrying more than I could handle. Nothing she said was against me, but hearing those words didn't make me feel better. It made me feel like I'd failed her once again, both of them, her and Noah. Now, more than ever, I felt like the tempter had finally won, and this time, I was going to let him.